Hey, Captain Andy Benedict here with First Mate Academy. I've been getting some questions about freshwater fishing, particularly bass fishing or bluegill. And I have some students asking about Lake Tarpon, just north of Clearwater. So if you're going to just fish for anything like bluegill or even a catfish, it's best to use a small J hook or a small circle hook. Okay, a small J hook or a small circle hook. And I have this right here. This is a small hook. It does have a little weight on it, so this would be considered a jig, but it doesn't have to have a weight on it. And it's got this little weed guard, which I like in lakes, especially like Lake Tarpon, where there's a lot of grass on the bottom. But if you don't have that specific setup, that's okay. As my students know, I like to use that non-slip loop knot. So we're going to make that non-slip loop knot. Remember, you're going to make your overhand knot, okay? And then you're going to find out which side that tag end is coming out of. Look at that. Is it coming out of heads or is it coming out of tails? It's coming out of the tails, the bottom side. So I'm going to take now the tag end and put it through the eye of the hook. Okay. There we go. All right, and I'm going to go through the, what do we say? The tail side? Did we say tail side? Yeah, we said tail side. So now I've got to go back through the tail side. Since it's coming out of tails, I got to go back through tails. So I'm going to go up through tails. There we go. And now to keep it under control, I'm going to pinch my circle and the two lines above it. Pinch that. I'm going to wrap the tag in around twice. Once, twice. And now since the first side was coming out of tails, that means that the other sides are coming out of heads. You see that? They're coming out of heads right here. So I'm going to go back through heads. All right. Then I'm going to keep that pinch there with my fingers. And I'm going to pull the main line away and the tag in towards the hook. There we go. So now I've got this nice loop there. And if you're using a live bait, it can move around freely. Or if you're using an artificial that needs to look real, it can move around better. Okay, so there's your non-slip loop knot. And it's also weedless because that tag end now is pointing down. So I'm going to now cut off a good portion of that tag end. There we go. Not all of it, because if you cut off all of it, that tag end could pull through when you get the big one on. All right. Okay, so now in Lake Tarpon, here's the deal. You know, if you're using just a regular small little hook, I would definitely put on a split shot weight about 3 or 4 inches above. So that's a split shot right there. And you know, you can pinch it right back here, right back there. You pinch it, you can take it on and off the line. So we're going to go ahead and take it and put it on the line. So I'm going to put it on the line right here. And I'm going to go ahead and pinch that on my line with my pliers. Okay. All right. So there we go. There we go. That's on there. Looks just like that. Okay. Again, if you have a jig head, you might not need the weight really, but if you don't have the weighted jig head, you need a weight. Okay. Especially if we're going to be fishing on the bottom near a dock, which is probably the most likely place you're going to catch a fish. And there's going to be bluegill, there's going to be catfish, there's going to be maybe even bass, of course. But on this hook now, I'm going to use just simply either some worms or night crawlers, or a piece of bread that you get wet and make into a ball, that'll work. Or a piece of hot dog, that'll work. Okay, and you just drop that down to the bottom and you wait for that fish to bite. And if you're using that circle hook, all you do is reel. Okay, all right, because if you set the hook, it's going to likely pull the hook out of the fish's mouth. Okay, if you're using a J hook that has that J shape, that long shank, and then that curve at the end that looks like a J, you want to feel for those nibbles. And when you feel that nibble, you want to set it, because that J hook could get down in their throat and could gut hook the fish, which we don't want to happen. Okay, so that's going to be your bluegill, your catfish, and maybe even a bass. That's going to be your most likely your setup you're most likely going to catch a lot of fish with, say at a dock. Okay, all right. Now, if you're fishing for bass and you really want to catch bass, all right, you're going to need to use a different setup. Okay, you could still use the split shot weight. All right, I'm going to take it off and I'm going to cut this off as well. All right. If you want to really catch bass, you got to use a little different setup here, and this is called the Texas rig. Okay, and you're going to use a wide gap worm hook. Okay, wide gap worm hook, and the ones I have are kind of old and rusty, but it's good for the demonstration. So that's a wide gap worm hook, and see how it's got that bend up there right towards the eye of the hook. Okay, so that's the wide gap worm hook. All right, and this is a 2 or a 3/0 wide gap worm hook. All right, we're going to make our non-slip loop knot again. Here we go. I'm going to make my overhand knot. There's my pretzel, I like to call it, as my students know. And which side? This time, look at that. This time it's coming out of the head side. If this were heads and this is tails, it's coming out the head side. That means the main line that goes up to my main line, okay, is coming out of tails. All right, it's coming out of tails. All right, it's coming out the bottom. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get my hook, and I'm going to put the tag in through the eye of the hook again. Okay, there we go. All right, and I'm going to hold that hook in my overhand knot, kind of pinch it in between my fingers. Okay, and then again, this is coming out of the head side. The top is resting on the top of the coin. Okay, so if it's coming out the top of the coin, I got to put it back through the top of the coin. So I'm going to go back through the top of the coin. All right, I'm going to bring it through, and I'm going to hold all of those together now to control the line. So I'm holding that overhand knot, that little circle, and the top and the bottom right there. I'm squeezing it, but just the outside of it, because I want to be able to go back through the hole. All right, so I'm going to wrap this around twice. Once, oops, that's once, and twice. There we go. And they're coming out of heads, so I've got to take, oh, nope, sorry, they're coming out of tails. I got to put it back through tails, right through tails. There we go. And I'm going to keep that under control with my fingers. I'm going to pull the main line and then the tag end towards the hook, and it should make that tag end point straight down towards the hook, just like that. Okay, so now I'm going to cut off the majority of the tag end. Again, not all of it. Why? Because when we get that big one, we don't want it to pull through. And we're using a non-slip loop knot so that the artificial lure can look, or the artificial worm, which if we're going to use, can look real and really move freely. Because the more movement you have, the more attention it's going to create, and the fish will see the movement, the predator fish will see the movement, and they'll want to, they especially bass, they want to attack something they see moving. So, okay, so there's your hook. All right. Now, you can use that split shot weight, okay? Right there on the end, right on the end. You can put that split shot weight right here, right down towards the end, just above your knot. Or you can use a bullet weight, which I also like because, and you're gonna put that bullet weight, you're gonna put the tag in through the pointed side of the bullet weight, okay? And I like the bullet weight, all right? You know what, I told you wrong. You're gonna put it through, we really ought to put it through the, on the line before the hook, and when you do that, you put the line through the pointed end. But since we already put the hook on the line, we're going to put it on backwards, or the opposite way. So we're going to put it through the wide part. All right, and I'll show you why that's important. Okay. All right, through the wide part. So there, now it's going to slide down, and see how that setup looks right there. That's important because when you pull that through grass or it hits rocks, that pointed end, the pointed end will deflect the rocks and the grass. All right. So when it goes through the water, that bullet weight will help deflect things, so it won't get stuck as easily. All right. So now I'm going to get my artificial worm. Okay. This is a 5-inch worm. This is actually, I think, like a watermelon, green pumpkin seed, watermelon, but I really like specifically green pumpkin seed with black flake, and that's what this color is. And these will work too. But I like this worm, green pumpkin seed with black flake. You're going to do what's called skin hook it. You're going to take the top, you're going to skin hook through like that. All right, you're going to slide it down like this, and then look, you got to flip it over to get it where it's resting on that little ledge. Okay, there we go. All right, now I'm going to turn it over, and I'm going to measure where I should put the hook point through the worm. So now I've got, look at that, right there is where that is going to go through the worm. So I've got to take now, I've marked it with my fingers. I'm going to take the point and put it right where my fingers are. I'm going to put it up and through like that. There we go. And then I'm going to pinch it. See that? There's the hook point. I'm going to pinch it. I'm going to push it forwards and then dive that hook point, push it forwards and dive that hook point into the top of the bait. So where it looks like this. The worm, see that? See how it's right there? It's right there in the top. So that hides the hook point, so it doesn't get stuck on the grass. All right. So there we go. That is the best setup right there for a grassy lake or pond, so that you don't get stuck. Okay. And then what you'll do is you'll cast it out towards the structure. Closer to the structure, the better. So under the docks, against the weeds, against the tree line, against the bank, as close as you can to it. And then you'll retrieve it back to where you like it to look like this. I like to go twitch, twitch, pause, and it'll go down to the bottom. You go twitch, twitch, and then it'll go down to the bottom. Twitch, twitch, it'll go down to the bottom, and it'll look like a fish. Okay. All right, that's it right there. Okay. Make sure in this cold weather that you're retrieving it slowly. So it's twitch, twitch, pause. About 3 or 4 seconds. Twitch, pause, about 3 or 4 seconds. Twitch, twitch, pause, about 3 or 4 seconds. Okay. And cast to the same spot maybe twice. Cast to another spot maybe twice. Another spot maybe twice. If you don't catch anything in about 10, 15 minutes, you should move spots. Okay. You should move spots. And with this setup, this is not a bait and wait like with the other hook. The other hook, this is your bait and weight. You put on your bread or your worm or your piece of hot dog and you just put it down the bottom and let it sit there. This one, you got to make it look like it's real. So you got to be casting and retrieving, okay? All right, well, that's the setup. That's the best setup that I've used in general for bass just about any season. Now, there are better setups to use for the changing seasons, but in general, that is it right there. That is it right there, okay? That is it right there. Now, if this starts to get, you know, all chunked up and you can't put it in very good anymore, all right, all you have to do, let's just say this is getting chunked up right here. I'll see how it ripped off. So all you got to do is you just got to pinch a piece off like this. Pinch a piece off. Now that moved everything down a little bit. So now I'm going to skin hook it again. Skin hook it. Bring it down like this. Flip the worm to the bottom. And then look, it rests right on that ledge. All right, and then I'll turn it over. I'm going to measure again where my thumb is. Okay. There's where my thumb. See, now I got to put that hook point right where my thumb is, or my pointer finger. So I'm going to go there and lift it up through. There it is. All right. And then I'm going to dive that hook in. I'm going to pinch, push forwards, pinch, push forwards, dive it in, and get that hook point inside to where it's weedless. Okay. There we go. So now your hook point is in a different spot. And it's a fresh spot where it's not all gunked up if you catch a fish or if it gets ripped right there. Okay. All right. So there's your setup. All right. And my bullet weight fell off, but you put your bullet weight down and it sits right there. Okay. Good luck. Have fun. Catch some fish. Let me know how you do. Send me a message if you have any questions.